In the 14 cases that have been previously mentioned, in each of those cases, regulated companies were also a party to your suits. Is that correct?
In some instances, yes.
In most of them. Can you name a few instances in which you have filed a lawsuit in your independent capacity as Attorney General against a corporate entity for violating state or federal pollution laws?
Senator, I have a list here that's been provided.
Can you name them, please?
Sure. There's a list that has been...
Can you name one?
Yes. The first is the Mayhart Egg Farm involving a CAFO situation and a cleanup of a large hen operation that affected water quality.
Did you file a lawsuit in that case, sir?
I did, Senator.
Okay, and what was the outcome of that case?
We received a good outcome against them.
And the name of that entity was what?
Mayhart Egg Farm.
And can you name any other cases where you have actually filed a lawsuit against a corporate entity for violating federal pollution laws?
In fact, that case was brought in conjunction with the EPA. And I want to address something, Senator, earlier. When you say independent capacity, those cases that you referred to, the list of cases, were as an extension of the DEQ in the state of Oklahoma, an extension of agencies at the state level that had authority granted to them by this body that we were.
And I understand that role as a former Attorney General, but that is you representing your client. I'm asking about your independent capacity as the Attorney General of your state. Let's move on. On the issue of mercury.
I would suggest that the Senator's time has expired in terms of moving on. Thank you. I would like to introduce for the record a letter.
Could I get to respond, please, ma'am?
No, sir. No.
Okay.
Are you saying that if it is classified, you will not discuss it? And then my follow-up question obviously would be, do you believe that discussion of Russian active measures is not the subject of classified information?
I stand by my previous comments.
Thank you.
Admiral Rogers, I think you testified, Admiral Rogers, that you did discuss today's testimony with someone in the White House?
I said I asked, did the White House intend to evoke executive privileges associated with any interactions between myself and the President of the United States?
And what was the answer to that question?
To be honest, I didn't get a definitive answer, and both myself and the DNI are still talking to the White House.
So then I'll ask both of you the same question. Why are you not answering these questions? Is there an invocation by the President of the United States of executive privilege? Is there or not?
Not that I'm aware of.
Then why are you not answering our
questions? Because I feel it is inappropriate, Senator.
What you feel isn't relevant, Admiral. What you feel isn't the answer. The answer is, why are you not answering the questions? Is it an invocation of executive privilege? If there is, then let's know about it. If there isn't, answer the questions.
I stand by the comments I've made. I'm not interested in repeating myself, sir. And I don't mean that in a contentious way.
Well, I do mean it in a contentious way. I don't understand why you're not answering our questions. You can't. When you were confirmed before the Armed Services Committee, you took an oath. Do you solemnly swear to give the committee the truth, the full truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. You answered yes to that.
And I've also answered that those conversations were classified, and it is not appropriate in an open forum to discuss those classified conversations.
What is classified about a conversation involving whether or not you should intervene in the FBI investigation?
Sir, I stand by my previous comments.
Mr. Coates, same series of questions. What's the basis for your refusal to answer these questions today?
The basis is what I've previously explained. I do not believe it is appropriate for me to.
What's the basis? I'm not satisfied with I do not believe it is appropriate or I do not feel I should answer. I want to understand a legal basis. You swore that oath to tell us the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and today you are refusing to do so. What is the legal basis for your refusal to testify to this committee?
I'm not sure I have a legal basis, but I'm more than willing to sit before this committee and during its investigative process in a closed session and answer your question.
Well, we're going to be having a closed session in a few hours. Do you commit to me that you're going to answer these questions in a direct and unencumbered way?
Well, that closed session you're going to have in a few hours involves the staff going over the technicalities of a number of these issues and doesn't involve us. But
well, is it your testimony that when you were before this committee in a closed session, you will answer these questions directly and unequivocally and without hesitation?
I plan to do that, but I do have to work through the legal counsel at the White House relative to whether or not they're going to exercise executive.
Admiral Rogers, will you answer these questions in a closed session?
I likewise respond as the DNI has. I certainly hope that is what happens. I believe that's the appropriate thing. But I do have to acknowledge, because of the sensitive nature and the executive privilege aspects of this, I need to be talking to the general counsel in the White House. I hope we come to a position where we can have this dialogue. I welcome that dialogue, sir.
I hope so, too. And I would just add in conclusion that both of you testified you had never been pressured under 3 years. I would argue that you have waived executive privilege by, in effect, testifying as to something that didn't happen. And I believe you opened the door to these questions. And it is my belief that you are inappropriately refusing to answer these questions today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Before I turn to Senator Lankford, let me say that the Vice Chairman and I have had conversations with Acting Attorney General Rosenstein when a special counsel was named. And as I had shared with the members of this committee prior to that, that as we carried out an investigation, there would come a point in time either with an investigation that was currently ongoing at the FBI, or if there was a special counsel with the special counsel, where there would be avenues that this committee could not explore. And it was my hope that already the Vice Chair and I would have had that conversation with the special counsel. We have not. We've made the request. We intend to have it. And I think that both of us anticipated that we would reach this point at some point in the investigation. We are there where there are some things that will fall into the special counsel and or an active investigation, Vice Chairman.
Let me just say, though, that at this point, we've not had that conversation with Mr. Mueller. We've not been waived off on any subject. And the way I'm hearing all of you gentlemen is that Mr. Mueller has not waived you off from answering any of these questions. Is that correct?
I've had no conversations with Mr. Mueller. I've been out of the country for the last 9 days, and I haven't had an opportunity.
Have any of you had, because if you've not had questions.
I ask that you stop so we can conduct this hearing the way we have planned it. Maybe it isn't going exactly the way that the minority would like to have it go, but we have said for a long period of time that we were going to proceed on this very day. And I think we ought to give the American people the opportunity to hear whether Judge Kavanaugh should be on the Supreme Court or not. And you have heard my side of the aisle call for regular order, and I think we ought to proceed in regular order. There will be plenty of opportunities to respond to the questions that the minority is legitimately raising.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Barr, has the President or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone?
I wouldn't.
Yes or no?
Could you repeat that question?
I will repeat it. Yeah. Has the President or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone? Yes or no, please, sir?
The President or anybody else?
Seems you would remember something like that and be able to tell us.
Yeah, but I'm trying to grapple with the word suggest. I mean, there have been discussions of matters out there that they have not asked me to open an investigation. But
perhaps they've suggested?
I don't know. I wouldn't say suggest.
Hinted?
I don't know.
Inferred? You don't know. Okay. In your March 24th summary, you wrote that, quote, after reviewing the special counsel's final report.
But I will say that no one.
Sir, I'm asking a question. In your March 24th summary, you wrote that, quote, after reviewing the special counsel's final report, Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein and I have concluded that the evidence is not sufficient to establish that the President committed an obstruction of justice offense. Now, the special counsel's investigation produced a great deal of evidence. I'm led to believe it included witnesses' notes and emails, witnesses' congressional testimony, witnesses' interviews, which were summarized in the FBI 302 forms, former FBI Director Comey's memos, and the President's public statements. My question is, in reaching your conclusion, did you personally review all of the underlying evidence?
No, we took and accepted.
Did Mr. Rosenstein?
No, we accepted the statements in the report as the factual record. We did not go underneath it to see whether or not they were accurate. We accepted it as accurate and made our.
So you accepted the report as the evidence?
Yes.
You did not question or look at the underlying evidence that supports the conclusions in the report?
No.
Did Mr. Rosenstein review the evidence that underlines and supports the conclusions in the report, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge. We accepted the statements in the report,
Did
and
anyone
the characterization of the evidence is true.
Did anyone in your executive office review the evidence supporting the report?
No.
No. Yet you represented to the American public that the evidence was not, quote, sufficient to support an obstruction of justice offense.
The evidence presented in the report. This is not a mysterious process. In the Department of Justice, we have pros memos and declination memos every day coming up. And we don't go and look at the underlying evidence.
Sir, would you support
the characterization of the evidence as true?
As the Attorney General of the United States, you run the United States Department of Justice. If in any U.S. attorney's office around the country, the head of that office, when being asked to make a critical decision about, in this case, the person who holds the highest office in the land, and whether or not that person committed a crime, would you accept them recommending a charging decision to you if they had not reviewed the evidence?
Well, that's a question for Bob Mueller. He's the U.S. attorney. He's the one who presents the report.
But it was you who made the charging decision, sir. You made the decision not to charge the president.
No, in a pros memo and in a declination memo.
You said it was your baby. What did you mean by that?
It was my baby to decide whether or not to disclose it to the public.
And whose decision was it? Who had the power to make the decision about whether or not the evidence was sufficient to make a determination of whether there had been an obstruction of justice?
Prosecution memos go up to the supervisor. In this case, it was the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General who decide on the final decision. And that is based on the memo as presented by the U.S. Attorney's Office.
I think you've made it clear that you've not looked at the evidence. We can move on. I think you've made it clear, sir, that you've not looked at the evidence, and we can move on. Will you agree to consult career DOJ ethics officials about whether your recusal from the 14 investigations that have been discussed by my colleagues is necessary?
I don't see any basis for it. I already consulted with them, and
you have consulted with them about the 14 other investigations?
About the Mueller case.
Have you consulted with the career DOJ ethics officials about the appropriateness of you being involved or recusing yourself from the 14 other investigations that have been referred out?
On what basis?
Conflict of interest, clear conflict of interest.
What's my conflict of interest?
I think the American public has seen quite well that you are biased in this situation and you've not been objective, and that would arguably be the conflict of interest.
Well, I haven't been the only decision maker here. Now, let's take the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, who was approved by this Senate 94-6 with specific discussion on the floor that he would be responsible